Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast. I'm Gaurav. Sawant. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval is in Beijing and he's met his Chinese counterpart, the special representative on India-China boundary talks, Wang Yi. India and China are to resume the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, or at least they're talking on the resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra in Tibet, and also talks to reopen the Nathula trade route between India and China. A very significant aspect is having learnt their lesson from the 2020 Galwan face-off and the standoff that followed for 4 long years. The two sides have reiterated the importance of maintaining peace and tranquility along the borders to promote overall development of ties. So India has once again reiterated overall ties can only improve if there is peace and tranquility at the borders. India and China held the special representative level talks after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping met in Kazan, Russia on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. We have a panel of experts to discuss threadbare the outcome of the SR level boundary talks on this special broadcast. Coming up at 10:30 tonight on India First, another temple remains found in Aligarh this time. So 4 temples in 4 days in minority-dominated areas. What does this mean? What will it lead to? We get you that story at 10:30. I'm Gaurav Sawant as always. So it's the 23rd round of special representatives talks on the India-China boundary issue, and these talks were held in Beijing. This was the first meeting of the special representatives since the Galwan standoff of 2020 and the tension along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. Now, both India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and the Chinese Special Representative Wang Yi positively affirmed the implementation of the latest disengagement of the October 2024, resulting in the patrolling and grazing in relevant areas, according to the statement that's been released after the meeting. There was talk on cross-border cooperation and exchanges, including the resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, data sharing on trans-border rivers and border trade. India and China have both underlined the importance of maintaining peace and tranquility in the border areas to promote overall development of India-China bilateral relationship. A significant point in the Indian statement is the emphasis on the need to ensure peaceful conditions on ground so that the issues on the border do not hold back the normal development of bilateral relations. Drawing on the learnings from the events of 2020, India and China discussed various measures to maintain peace and tranquility on the borders and advance effective border management. So what is it that India is seeking? Stable, predictable and amicable India-China relations for regional and global peace and prosperity. Now, this was India's emphasis. But what does this effectively mean for India-China relations on ground? Joining me on India First is Lieutenant General S.L. Narasimhan. General Narasimhan speaks the Chinese Mandarin language, reads the Chinese minds, has commanded a corps in the East and is a part of the National Security Advisory Board. He studies China very closely. General, as always, welcome on India Today. Also with me is Professor Brahma Chelani, again someone who keeps a hawk eye on China, former advisor to the National Security Council, and Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, former top diplomat, again somebody who studies India-China relations very closely. So we have 3 domain experts to decode what the statement means. General Narasimhan, what is the biggest takeaway from this statement for you? It confirms disengagement, that's complete, and that patrolling has resumed, as is grazing at the tactical level. But is there a bigger takeaway for you, sir?
I have, thank you very much, Gaurav. It's nice to see you, at least on the TV, if not in person. Thanks for calling me over for this event. There are 3 common points which come up in the India as well as the Chinese statement that have been put out. One is the fair, reasonable and mutually acceptable kind of a solution for the border issue, border boundary question. This has been mentioned by both the sides. However, Indian side has mentioned it twice in the 5-6 point that they have mentioned. So fair, reasonable and mutually acceptable is something that is going to be important in this particular statements. Second, of course, you have mentioned Mansarovar Yatra is likely to commence. the river data sharing can commence, as well as the border trade in Natula is something which has been agreed upon. The other thing, third thing, is also you mentioned maintenance of peace and tranquility. That is the prerequisite for the boundary talks to continue and to make some kind of a progress. The difference in the statements is something that comes up on two issues. One, in the Chinese statement, there is a mention about a package solution.
Yes.
Now, this package solution is something which was there earlier, but thereafter it was left out. Now it has come up again. It is initial stages. We don't know actually exactly what was discussed. We'll have to wait for the details to come out. But this is one interesting word in the Chinese statement that I noticed. Chinese statement also has drawn the attention to 2005 agreement that was signed as part of the first step towards the three-step process of resolution the boundary question, which implies that there is some kind of an agreement and the progress that is being talked about. And this package solution is something that we need to be looking into it much more carefully. Indian side, of course, has mentioned this fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable kind of a solution to the boundary question. That is, again, more important. These are, I thought, were the takeaways from this two statements.
You know, I'll come to that package solution in just a moment, because Professor Brahma Chilani, that is something which is extremely interesting, mentioned on the Chinese side, not on the Indian side. Professor Chilani, India has repeatedly emphasized peace and tranquility at the borders. That's a must for the relationship to grow. But does the Chinese readout indicate China wants to focus on closer economic ties despite border tensions? And what do you make of this word package solution?
Well, the Chinese statement is packaged in a way that is typically Chinese. They come up with catchy slogans, so now they have a 6-point consensus slogan. But in reality, what they have stated in their statement is nothing new. The package solution bit has evolved over the years. It was first mentioned by Deng Xiaoping when the then Foreign Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee met Deng Xiaoping. And since then, this concept of package solution has evolved, and in fact, in Beijing, it has been interpreted differently. Okay. What Deng Xiaoping originally proposed and what Beijing scholars now talk about, or Beijing officials talk about, is quite different. But I think the most important thing missing from the two statements is the issue of the massing of troops along the border.
Yes.
Indian soldiers forward deployed against China are going through their 5th brutal Himalayan winter. They are up to 1.2 lakh PLA troops, combat-ready troops with heavy weaponry that remain deployed along the India frontier from the western sector to the eastern sector. How can they be normalcy when there is massing of troops? De-induction has to be accomplished, and there is no mention at all in either statement about this critical issue. What is mentioned is about a fair border solution. But Gaurav, we should not forget that negotiations to resolve the border dispute have been going on for many decades. They began when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister.
Absolutely, sir.
Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister in the early 1980s. The talks began as senior level talks. Then in 1987, the name was changed to Joint Working Group. Nothing really changed, but just became a Joint Working Group. Then in 2003, again, nothing changed, only the nomenclature changed, became special representatives. The special representatives have been at it for 21 years.
Yes.
And they have little to show. So, all this hype about this being something new, something promising, misses the point that the present border crisis has arisen essentially because China violated each and every border agreement it signed with India. And there have been a series of border agreements that India and China have signed, starting from 1993.
93.
Every agreement was violated by them. And for example, resumption of Indian pilgrims tours to Kailash Mansarovar, or resumption of hydrological data sharing on rivers. Who suspended all that? China.
Yeah. Absolutely.
China suspends things at its own sweet will, and then where it wants, it resumes them.
And that is why India wants the relationship to be predictable. The relationship is anything but predictable. But let's take this, step by step. Ambassador Sajanhar, the first meeting after 2019, more important, the first meeting post Galwan 2020. According to you, what's the biggest takeaway, if at all, from the 23rd round of the special representative talks?
Yeah, thank you very much, Gaurav, for having me. There are a couple of positives and a couple of, ideas that don't find mention. First, in terms of positives, I think the fact that the meeting took place, between the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping there, and it was decided that we are going to have the special representative talks. We are going to sort of reinstate that. We are going to have meetings between the foreign secretaries of the two countries. We are going to start meetings between the foreign ministers. So this is the beginning of a process.
Okay.
So first thing I would like to see here is that the process has commenced. Now, in terms of outcomes, I think there is very little to show. I agree with the previous two speakers, what is mentioned, that this whole SR exercise has been going on for the last 21 years. And we have very little to show on the ground. It is supposed to resolve the border issue, the boundary problem. Has it been able to contribute in any significant way? So I would have imagined that there would be, we are going back on what was already there, fully well knowing that it has not really yielded the desired results.
And is that...
But yet, meaning I would like to say that this is a format on which a conversation is taking place. I think the biggest problem here is, in my view, the trust deficit between the two countries. Why China came in 2020 and did what it did, it has not been able to explain so far.
Absolutely. So the trust deficit is because of China. All the violations have happened because of China.
Absolutely.
And yet when we move forward, General Narasimhan, the Indian statement talks of emphasis on peaceful conditions on the borders and lessons from the events of 2020. The need for effective border management. What are new CBMs or confidence building measures that need to be put in place, considering that nothing worked, whatever happened in 1993, 1996, 2005, 2013 BDSA, and yet, Galwan 2020 happens, sir?
You see, it is very simple. I fully agree with my panelists here on the show. One is about the troops along the border. I'll come to your question in 30 seconds.
Sir.
Troops along the border, as we have agreed that this is the only first step that has been completed. I agree with Professor Brahmachalani. The other two steps of de-escalation and de-induction are to be negotiated now. That is something that we need to be doing. That is on the higher level military commanders talk that is going to take place on those subsequently. Second is on the trust deficit, which Ambassador Sajanhar mentioned. That I agree that the trust deficit has been created by 2020. And that brings me to your question. The issue is this: you can agree on any number of CBMs, you can sign any number of agreements, but unless both the sides follow that, if one side decides not to follow it, all these agreements and all the standard operating procedures that we have on the border, they all become useless. So instead of introducing new CBMs, my suggestion would be to tighten the CBMs that we already have and ensure that such lapses do not occur. Because one more CBM won't help you, because if 5 of them before this hasn't helped, I don't think next one is going to help you if both the sides don't follow it. So to my way of thinking, this is a good first step that has happened, but this is only the first step. There are many more steps that we need to come across.
Okay.
One, of course, the troops, the induction, etc. The other thing is to make progress on the boundary discussions. Like both the panelists said, it is 21 years since the SR talk started. And it is still in the second stage. The first stage was the 2005 agreement. Now it is still in the second stage. So this is where I think we need to make a progress. And that is where the main point I mentioned to you about the package solution finds importance in the Chinese statement. And that is where I think we need to have more clarification coming out in the coming days.
In fact, Professor Chilani, how would you look at this talk of resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, data sharing on trans-border rivers and border trade, as you rightly pointed out, all stopped by the Chinese, given the tension that arose? And will there be resumption, or there's just talk that we'll talk about resuming these three?
Well, first, look at the river issue. India provides hydrological data to Pakistan and Bangladesh on a real-time basis, free of cost. But India has to buy hydrological data from China, and the purchase of hydrological data is based on bilateral agreements. And yet, this is not the first time. Even in May 2017, before the Doklam crisis arose, just after India decided to boycott the inaugural summit of the Belt and Road Initiative, China unilaterally, arbitrarily terminated the sharing of hydrological data with India. As a result, these monsoonal floods that occurred in Assam caught India unawares, and there were these preventable deaths. These preventable deaths, they were preventable because when you don't have upstream hydrological data, you're not prepared to respond to such an emergency. So these deaths were preventable. Now, again, at its own sweet will, today China is willing to share, or rather sell, hydrological data to India. But there's one other issue. I won't even go into the past. Right under Prime Minister Modi, you can see the roller coaster ride that India has been through in relation to China. It began with Sabarmati waterfront meeting with Xi Jinping, followed by Doklam crisis and the capture of Doklam almost entirely by China. Then came the Wuhan spirit, the Chennai Connect. That was followed by India being taken by surprise by the Chinese encroachments of April 2020. And now then we had the Kazan meeting between Xi Jinping and Modi, and now the latest statement. Now this is quite a roller coaster ride, in terms of what India has been through.
Absolutely.
And the main thing that Indian Army Chief has said, and even the senior officials have said, India wants a return to status quo ante. But how can there be status quo ante when there are buffer zones and no patrolling areas which have been established largely on Indian territory in eastern Ladakh? Without removal of these buffer zones and no patrolling areas, and China pulling back.
I'll come to General Narasimhan to respond to that in just a moment, because even I've been seeking a solution to this, but the limited time that I have on this part of the show, Ambassador Sajjanhar, as Professor Chilani rightly pointed out, India seeks a stable, predictable and amicable relationship with China. The relationship has been anything but stable, predictable and amicable despite all the efforts made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whether it was Sabarmati or Mamallapuram or Wuhan. Where is the response from China?
Yeah, I think the ball, as we've been talking, as all the other two panelists have also been saying, I think the ball is squarely in China's court. And, all the aggressive actions, all the offensive actions that have been taken, they have been taken by China. And I think it is for China really to demonstrate its good intent, its goodwill. And we have really not seen any of that so far. So, what I would imagine is, what has happened, what has transpired over the last 4.5 years is that the relations have been very strained, and we have really, not been talking to each other at any, of course, the ministers have been meeting on sidelines of different international sessions. But I think there has to be a process to set the normalization. These steps that are being taken, I think these are baby steps, but it'll have to be, as far as India is concerned, like once bitten, twice shy. you have to walk very, very carefully, but move towards.
Bitten many times by China, and generally it appears that they're seeking access to the Indian market, and the Chinese statement seems to indicate that look at the bigger picture, look at the overall picture. That's how you move forward in the relationship. Don't just focus on the border. So China once again appearing to wanting to lead us up the garden path. India says we are seeking vitality into the framework for settlement of boundary question. Explain the meaning of SRs reiterating the importance of maintaining political perspective of the overall bilateral relationship while seeking a fair, reasonable and mutually acceptable framework, sir.
You see, the Chinese have been saying this for the last 4.5 years. Now the boundary issue, we need to keep it in the right place and progress the bilateral relationship forward. We have been saying, sorry, that is not going to be the case. The status of the boundary will determine the status of the bilateral relationship. That has been the stance in the last 4.5 years. And that stands even today. I don't think there has been a change in the thing. I do agree with Professor Brahmacharani to the extent that there were a lot of efforts made. Like, for example, the kind of meeting that took place between Mr. Modi and Mr. Xi Jinping and the Wuhan talk, the informal summit and the Chennai Connect. All those were in the process of actually improving that relationship. But everything went totally awry the moment 2020 happened. So this is something that we need to set right. Okay. That is where the trust comes up, trust building comes up. On the buffer zone issue, it is never meant to be a buffer zone. I think everybody has started mentioning it as a buffer zone. It is supposed to be a temporary moratorium on patrolling by both the sides. And that is going to be the one which is going to come up for talks again between the higher military level commanders. And so it is not a given up issue that buffer zones are there and will continue to remain there. It's not so. It is a temporary moratorium on patrolling, and that will get negotiated in the next zone. So my point is, the short point is this: we want stability, we want peace and tranquility along the border. We want to ensure we go to the process of de-escalation and de-induction, and then the rest of the things can start. Please don't forget the press note 3 is still active.
Okay. We'll continue to debate this and discuss this in the days ahead. I've run out of time on this part of the show. Gentlemen, as always, many thanks for joining me here on India Today. After Sambhal and Kashi in Uttar Pradesh, a Shivling was located at an abandoned temple in Aligarh's Muslim-dominated Sarai Rahman area in Uttar Pradesh today. So in 4 days, 2 temples have been found during an anti-encroachment drive in Sambhal. Both the structures are said to be very old. They've been locked up for over 46 years. In Varanasi, a Shiv temple was found again in a Muslim-dominated area. It's said to be hundreds of years old. Now, the discovery of these temples, it sparked off a furor, a massive political face-off with political parties blaming each other. We get you more in this report on what's been found and the political face-off it's led to.
2 temples in 4 days. An anti-encroachment drive in Sambhal has recovered old shrines that were shut down years ago. The first temple, which Lord Hanuman's idol, Shivling and Nandi, was reopened after 46 years. This shrine was 1.5 kilometers away from the Jama Masjid, where riots erupted in November during a court-ordered survey. The second temple, which had been locked for years, according to locals, was reopened in the presence of the police. An idol of Hanuman was found at this temple. The DM has asked the ASI to ascertain how old the temples were.
हमने एएसआई को साइंटिफिक इन्वेस्टिगेशन के लिए लिखा है और जो मंदिर मिला है उसके पास में कूप जो मिला है वो बहुत पुराना बताया जा रहा है, लगभग 400-500 वर्ष पुराना लोग बताते हैं। लगभग 1.5-2 घंटे खुदाई के बाद पहले एक मूर्ति निकली जो मां पार्वती की थी, जो उनमें जो सिर था वो टूटा हुआ था। थोड़ी और खुदाई हुई तो इसके बाद 2 मूर्तियां और निकली।
Meanwhile, a Hindu outfit in Varanasi claimed to have found a Shiva temple in the Muslim-dominated Madanpura area on Monday. The organization is demanding the temple be reopened. In Aligarh, there is a recovery of a shivling from an abandoned temple in a Muslim-dominated area, Sarai Rahman. The recovery sparked demands for the restoration by Hindu groups. The incident drew large crowds, prompting police intervention to maintain order.
देखिए, एक सूचना संज्ञान में आई थी आज सुबह कि इस तरह का एक प्राचीन मंदिर जो है सराय रहमान थाना क्षेत्र बन्ना देवी में मिला है। इसमें पुलिस और प्रशासन की टीम सक्रिय होकर इसकी जांच कर रही है। जो शिकायत दर्ज कराई गई है कि इसको अवैध रूप से कब्जा किया गया है, इस संबंध में भी जांच कराई जाएगी और जिन लोगों द्वारा इस मंदिर पर अवैध कब्जा किया गया है उनके विरुद्ध जो है विधिक कार्रवाई भी की जाएगी।
The flurry of temple discoveries has sparked a political showdown.
समाजवादी पार्टी हमेशा से तुष्टीकरण की राजनीति करती रही है। हमेशा सनातन को अपमानित करने, राम भक्तों पर गोलियां चलाने और हमेशा हिंदू विरोधी बात करके, सनातन विरोधी बात करके अपने वोट बैंक को संरक्षित करने का काम है।
संभल का एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन 100% झूठ बोला है। कभी जांच हुई तो ये एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन वाले जेल चले जाएंगे।
Meanwhile, Sambhal MP Zia ur Barq, accused in the Sambhal riots case, has moved the Allahabad High Court seeking a stay on his arrest.
इस वक्त मैं संभल में जियाउर रहमान बर्क के घर के ठीक बाहर मौजूद हूँ। सांसद घर पर नहीं है। संभल पुलिस की माने तो अब सबूत जुटाने का काम चल रहा है। सांसद पर शिकंजा कसने की तैयारी है।
The administration has tightened security in Sambhal after the discovery of 2 temples to ensure peace is not disturbed. With Arvind Ojha, Bureau Report, India Today.
So after Sambhal and Kashi, the discovery of a shivling and remnants of a temple at Aligarh, they've actually stirred a hornet's nest. Multiple Hindu organizations are seeking restoration of the temple, and this time, even if it is in a Muslim-dominated area like it was in Sambhal and in Kashi. The Hindus insist it's about Vishwas, or their belief, and Virasat, the legacy. But is there an apprehension that this could lead to simmering anger and angst? Are we now sitting on the edge of a volcano of communal tensions that may erupt any time? What is the need of the hour to ensure peace, harmony and progress? That should remain central to India's growth story as the quest for Vishwas and Virasat continues. Joining me on India First is Sharad Trivedi of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Vivek Silas represents the Samajwadi Party. Dr. Vikram Singh is former Director General of the Uttar Pradesh Police, someone who's been a part of the history of Uttar Pradesh in the past 4 decades and more. But Sharad Trivedi, I want to begin by asking you, sir, are Vishwas and Virasat, belief and legacy, now more important than peace, harmony, progress and prosperity? What do you make of the remains of a temple or a shivling found in Muslim-dominated areas, sir?
I don't understand. How is this an oxymoron? You can be peaceful and you can have a temple. This is the most peaceful religion on earth it has ever been. They are not mutually opposite words. It's the same thing. You have a religion, you have got a religion of peace, you have got a temple. I don't think it has hurt anybody. Not a single temple has been constructed over a masjid. It is the mosques which have been constructed over temples. So this is not an issue of peace. It is not an issue of aggrandizement. This is a thing which existed. They are reclaiming their legacy. And I want to tell you one thing, that this is a time for peace. This is a time for reconciliation. We have seen the king of Japan and the prime minister of Japan apologizing to the comfort women in Korea who were being abused during the World War II. We have seen the Germans giving billions of dollars to the Israelis for the crimes committed by Nazis. We had the Queen of England coming to Jallianwala Bagh. She didn't express, she didn't say sorry, but she expressed regret that that thing had happened. It is a time for reconciliation. Please give it back to those who worship it.
Okay.
What is wrong with it? Some crime, something has happened in the past. We have got an SC/ST Act. We have got an OBC Act. Why? Because something wrong had been done to these people in the past. We are trying to say sorry. It's a collective way of the government of India, the people of India saying sorry to these OBC, SC, ST people that yes, something wrong had happened. We are saying sorry. We are going to restore your honor. Please restore the honor of these people who have been deprived of the most sacred places.
Fair enough. Let me take this to Vivek Silas.
Allah or Paigambar Muhammad were not born in India. This is something native to India. Ram is the heart of and soul of the country. We have got Baba Vishwanath, the heart and soul of the country. And we have got a confessional statement of the people who did it in our law.
Yes.
Legal system, confessional statement is given the highest level of importance in criminal law.
Fair enough.
We have got Babar himself saying that I have done it. We have even got the date, 2nd September 1669, when the Ayodhya temple was demolished and the report was filed in Kashi Vishwanath Mandir was demolished and the report filed with in the Mughal court.
Let me then take this to Vivek Silas. Vivek Silas, you heard Mr. Trivedi. The point is there should be truth and there should be reconciliation. If Hindus want to reclaim their places of worship that they were denied in some instances for decades, in some instances for centuries, why not, even if it's in a Muslim-dominated area?
Yes, good evening to all of you and good evening to you. I would just like to say India has a glorious and a magnificent past of more than 5,000 years now. You know, if you go anywhere, you'll find temples everywhere, you know. Even if it is found in a Muslim-dominated area, it doesn't make a difference at all, you know. But the thing is, temple was found in Kannauj as well, you know, and that temple was closed for the last almost 36 years, you know, since 1978. And the thing was that the owner of the temple, the owner of the land and the man who made the temple, Mr. Rastogi, he said that there was no pujari there to worship, there were no followers who used to come. That was the reason that he had to close the temple. I think Bharatiya Janata Party should make sure the temples all over India that are being found, whether they are, in the Hindu-dominated areas or the Muslim-dominated area, pujari should be, nominated. They should have a salary, and you should start with the Bhajan Kirtan. That doesn't make a difference at all, you know.
So
I don't think it will.
This is the official position of the Samajwadi Party. This is the official position of the Samajwadi Party. Reopen temples, whether it's in Sambhal or in Kashi or in Aligarh or wherever else in the country. Reopen those temples. That's the point you're making, and that there will be no communal violence. There should be no communal tension. That's the point Samajwadi Party is making.
There should be not, because India has been a peaceful country.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
India is a peaceful country. There will not be, because, and you know what, you talked about peace, harmony, prosperity and progress, you know, that is what the Bharatiya Janata Party is lacking at the moment.
I wanted to ask you, if everything is so good, if everything is so good, why is it that policemen have to be deployed even to put electricity meters in Sambhal? If everything is so nice, if everything is so peaceful, why is it that the electricity department is scared to enter an area where an electricity meter needs to be installed, and that massive deployment has to take place?
The problem is that the kind of politics that the Bharatiya Janata Party is doing at the moment, you know what happened in Bahraich. At the end of the day, it came out that the Bharatiya Janata Party and the people was responsible for the riots in Bahraich. And it's the Bharatiya Janata Party MLA who has said he has not been questioned. He has not been suspended from the Bharatiya Janata Party. That means Bharatiya Janata Party somehow or the other accepts that Bahraich riots were done by the Bharatiya Janata Party. So this is the type of politics that they have been playing. You know, if you see in 2024 what the Honorable Prime Minister said, he said कि आएंगे कभी आपके मंगलसूत्र छीन के ले जाएंगे, कभी आपकी बहू बेटियों को उठा के ले जाएंगे, कभी वो कपड़ों से पहचान लेते हैं, कभी दिवाली की बात करते हैं, कभी शमशान कब्रिस्तान की बात करते हैं, तब कभी
I wanted to bring in Dr. Vikram Singh, since you've raised a question about Bahraich, Mr. Trivedi.
that is the place.
Mr. Trivedi, quickly respond to the point that he's raised before I bring in Dr. Vikram Singh for a fact check on this.
What my friend Vivek has been saying is based on the first FIR which was filed on the basis of wrong information. Subsequently, when the real facts came out, the FIR has been withdrawn. The MLA has already withdrawn the FIR because it was based on false information which he had received, and as a local representative of the people, he had to go to the police to file the FIR. So that chapter is closed. It has nothing to do with that. This was a peaceful yatra which was taking place. One of these Shanti Doot jumped onto the bandwagon. He pulled out the pen drive which was being used to play the music. That is when the whole thing started.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with Hindus or it has got to do with the Muslims. This is the problem of the politicians. The secular front is the problem. I can prove it. It is not a problem of the Muslims or the Hindus. We should remember that the Sonia ke Asu, the information was given by Salman Khurshid. Salman Khurshid himself is Muslim. He never said that he had Asu in his eyes. The words like Osama bin Laden ji and Hafiz Sahab was not said by any Muslim or Hindu. It was said by Digvijay Singh ji. So it is not a question of Hindu-Muslim. It is the question of the secular parties. They are the people who are crying because they have got an idea that, howling with these kind of slogans or taking such names is going to get them votes. It's simple. It has nothing to do with either
Sir, that's
Hindus
a
or
very
Muslims.
that's a pertinent point you raise. However, the Congress is not here on this debate. But I want to bring in Dr. Vikram Singh. Dr. Vikram Singh, if India is truly proud, and I want us to be proud of the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb of our country, and you heard the Samajwadi Party representative saying that Muslims will have no problems, nobody has a problem if temples are reopened in Muslim dominated areas and if pujaris are appointed everywhere and if temples start. I don't think there is a problem, but why was there a problem with the survey that was happening, at the Harihar Mandir or the Shahi Masjid in Sambhal? But though that's another issue. But would you want to come in for a fact check, Dr. Vikram Singh?
Absolutely. Good evening, Gaurav ji and esteemed panelists. Words of profound wisdom from Mr. Vivek ji and very soothing in the current charged atmosphere. Indeed, it is not impossible for the district magistrate to nominate a pujari for every Lawaris temple or a Maulavi for every Lawaris mosque if there is any. But where there is a will, there is a way, and this is something that is perfectly doable. Now, coming to the fact that if we're getting temples one or the other way, there should be a survey. And the stoning of the commission duly appointed by the court in the Harihar Mandir, that was best avoided. And why it happened? It did not happen on the first day. I have served in that area for 3 years in the DIG and nothing happened. But I do think that there are vested interests, there are criminal elements, irrespective of community, irrespective of political affiliations. I would say that anyone who usurps the other community's lands and creates this property as a hub of illegitimate supply of electricity, and then also maliciously concealing the temples with a criminal intent, that is a cause of concern, and it fulfills all the ingredients of land mafia, and therefore my recommendation would be also to register the case under the UP Gangsters Act and have it investigated on the people who were the immediate beneficiaries of this land grab and also this illegitimate supply of electricity. It is not just one thing. One thing has led to another. There are criminal, and there's a brazen argument that if I am in even illegitimate position of any debt for 10 years by the doctrine of adverse possession, that land belongs to me. No, it does not happen. That way, any usurper will come, stay there for 13 years and say this land is mine, doesn't belong to you. That is just, a misinterpretation and a very absurd interpretation of law. The law states it will be attached under the CRPC, and the SDM court or the police commissioner court will sit in judgment and say the Malikana Haq and the title papers will be reviewed and then handed to the rightful owner.
Vivek Silas is saying that every temple should be reopened. Let the state government, let Yogi Adityanath's government appoint a pujari, even if it's in a Muslim-dominated areas. Now, a locked-up temple, for example, in Sambhal or Aligarh or Kashi, should the administration open it, wait for courts of law, or is there an apprehension? Wear your legal hat. Could it lead to a law and order breakdown?
No, if the secular parties are kept under control, I don't think there's going to be any law and order problem whatsoever. Bharatiya Janata Party is not in the business of opening temples, but if some private individual files a case in the court, he takes a legal route and wants the sort of his own redressal of his grievances, so there is no problem. The government is going to provide full support. That is exactly what happened in Sambhal. Mr. Jain, Vishnu Shankar Jain, is neither a member of the Bharatiya Janata Party, nor I don't think any one of his family members are a member of Bharatiya Janata Party. He went to the court in Sambhal, and he is the one who got the order. The government was had to execute the court mandate. That is what the government did. When these Shanti Doots landed up there, they created the trouble. We have got 50 surveys taking place in every district under court mandate every day. It doesn't. We don't have rights. It is only when we have got the kind of an agent provocator like Shafiqur Rahman Bark or his nephew now, Ziaur Rahman Bark. These are the kind of people who do these kind of things. We've already seen that a meter was taken out from his house, which had zero reading for the last 6 months. And when the fresh meter, a test meter was put in place, within 12 hours, the reading was showing 98 units. We have pillars inside mosques which are providing 135 connections in Sambhal. It is Samajwadi Party and their cohorts. They have to answer the question: why was this happening?
Okay.
There is a blurring of lines between the party, the government, and the police during the Samajwadi Party. We have seen that in Ayodhya, the Thana was running from a private land and the bakery was running on government land. Here we have got the Shafiqur Rahman Bark's house having this kind of electricity connections. I think even a Panwala has got a better meter reading than him.
You want to quickly respond, Mr. Silas, because when you say Hindus locked up those homes and left, and that led to temples being closed, Yogi Adityanath on the floor of the house gave details why Hindus had to lock up their house and leave, because they were massacred. 184 in 1978, he said, were chopped in pieces and burnt. That is why Hindus left. Now, if they're seeking reopening of their temples and the illegality that's been on, the alleged illegality that Mr. Trivedi points to, respond to that, sir.
What happened in 1978, if at all it is true, because I was a kid at that time, but if something like that had happened in the past, it is absolutely, something to be shameful about it. But now it is the past. We have to look in the future what is going to happen. The basic thing is there should be peace, harmony, and progress of the country.
Okay, so truth and reconciliation is something that you speak of. What is your understanding, sir? Whether it is Mathura or Kashi or the Harihar temple at Sambhal or these temples that are being located, should Hindus be, legally seeking access to their places of worship, or will it lead to a tinderbox situation?
It cannot lead to a tinderbox situation, because no war can be humanity's permanent state, no writing can be permanent, and no peace can be the perpetuation of such a right. There has to be a reconciliation, and that reconciliation will happen only when there is rapprochement. And any status quo can be impinged only by judicial intervention, neither by any one of us, nor by any political party, nor by the police, nor by the magistracy. One. Now, there can be no two Bethlehems, there can be no two Makkah and Madinas. Likewise, there cannot be two Ajodhyas, two Kashis, and two Mathuras. Similarly, if the place has a permanent place in the mythology, in the philosophy and the rituals of a faith, well, all of us need to respect that. And the manner in which the ghettoization happened in these areas, you also mentioned Yogi Ji's speech, 22 wells were also covered up. Yes. And the sub-power station was made illegitimate. How can that happen? That happens only when you build a citadel around yourself so that there is no entry of any PSC or paramilitary force, any magistrate or any police force of the Home Guard, no intelligence officer, because there is a feeling, हमारे इलाके में पुलिस कैसे आ सकती है? The ground reality should be the police can go anywhere where there is a legal requirement. Therefore, it has to be both the sides have to sit, and learned panelists like Trivedi ji, Silas sir, all need to sit together and find a way out, because we just cannot go on like this. There has to be an understanding. Okay. And if there is temple, I would expect the community to be magnanimous enough to hand it over and undo the historical wrong that has happened in the past, because that scar is bleeding and that scar has to be healed before there's a talk of permanent peace.
And let courts decide. There can be no citadels and no-go areas for security forces if they need to go there legally. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me.